Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan. It's another Tuesday night, and I'm broadcasting a ranked list video like I have for the last couple of weeks. I'm worried I'm going to start getting addicted to these like so many other streaming things I like to do. But this is fun, easy, kind of frivolous stuff, and I thought I'd pop in and do another one for you real quick. I've got a movie to watch for the request tomorrow, so I'm going to try not to be on for too long tonight. This won't be a real long stream, knock on wood. I always say that. They end up going an hour and a half. But I picked a ranked list tonight that is a lot shorter than the last two I've done. So I went with something really short, really quick and easy. Instead of a list of over 100 things, I picked a list of like 50 things. So it's way shorter. It's real tiny. In fact, I don't know what the point is of even broadcasting something that only has 50 items, but here we are. I thought I might as well make cap off the little series of videos I've accidentally made the last couple of days and turn it into a trilogy. So naturally, this will be the worst of them, I am sure. But the other day, Jason and I did a video game stream with the Star Trek: The Next Generation TNG game, and then yesterday we did the first episode of the pilot show, which Jason and I are super excited about. That went really well. I want to say thanks a lot to everybody that came in for that. And I went, well, I'm doing these ranked lists. I guess I should pick something related to Star Trek. I don't know that anybody's going to care about this. There's not even a lot of people watching right now at this minute, but, might as well. So I thought I'd pick something easy. And yeah, it's 50 items, but it's still going to be pretty easy. This is another pre-made one that I found, but it looks like a pretty good one. This is a ranked list of 90s Star Trek characters. And like I said, it looks like there's about 50 here, and mostly really kind of major characters that if you've watched very much 24th century Star Trek at all, you ought to recognize. So we're not going to anything real obscure here, relatively. I mean, if you're not real familiar with some of these characters might seem kind of random to you, but those of us that are big Star Trek fans, and particularly for is this as 90s Star Trek or 24th century Star Trek, kind of obvious picks, most of this. I saw a couple of lists that went a lot more obscure, but all of them had new Trek stuff in it. I didn't really want to do that, and I could have taken a lot of that out, but I thought, this way we can do something a little bit, again, relatively shorter anyway. But yeah, the last two videos I did were TNG things, so I thought I better kind of stick within that wheelhouse. So there won't be any TOS or Enterprise here, because this is it's kind of interesting the way this worked out. 90s Star Trek again also means things from specifically the 24th century, because once we get past the 90s, we're into Enterprise, which is a prequel set in the 22nd century, and before that, of course, you're in the 23rd century with TOS and the movies, and then I guess technically there's a little bit of 80s Star Trek with TNG, because it starts in 87, but that is considered largely a 90s show, not just because it was the majority of it happens during the 90s, but also because that's when the best seasons and the best episodes are. Anyway, welcome everybody. Thanks a bunch for being here. Seeing some more people popping in here. Clone Army 66. Hi Cap, love the Star Trek videos you've been doing recently. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks. Missed doing them. And it's been nice to have the opportunity, kind of the excuse to do them with what we decided to do for the first episode of the pilot show. Once again, quick plug for that. Next week, and we don't have a specific date set up yet for this. We're gonna try to do them weekly, but I mean, I don't have a regular time slot for it. But next week, we're gonna do the pilot for House, which is a show that neither Jason or I have ever watched. So that will be a real different animal. We'll come in with some background that Jason will do on that, but I don't know hardly anything about that show except for what my parents had told me, because my mom and my stepdad are kind of obsessive House fans, but I've never watched that entire episode. Anyway, let's go ahead and do this, shall we? So it looks like this kind of jumps around, and I'll do it in the order that it's in just for the sake of variety. So we're not starting with TNG and moving our way upward. It seems to be no rhyme nor reason to the order of characters on this list. I will try not to take too long with this. I went cutesy and changed the names of the tiers. So instead of S all the way to F, I did it kind of like I did with the Tick, where I changed them to thematically relevant names. So Admiral is your S tier and Crewman is your F tier. It'll be interesting to see if anything winds up there. I think we'll see a lot of things in the top 3 boxes because these are mostly really well-liked, kind of beloved characters. But let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So we start with B'Elanna Torres from Voyager, of course, the chief engineer of that show. Torres is a character that I think a lot of people considered kind of irritating at her debut, but someone that kind of grew more on us as the show went along. She became a bit more layered. I think arguably she was the most Maquis-esque of the Maquis, and the character that continued to hold on to more of that than any of the rest of them did. Besides Seska, obviously, but she was a villain. She's in this list too. But Torres continued to be kind of rebellious, didn't like to really listen to orders, to what people had to say about her. I hadn't even really had this thought before, but in a weird way, she was almost like an Ensign Ro sort of character if she were to actually be main cast and continue on. That was an idea that we kind of kept messing with, particularly because Roddenberry didn't want there to be any conflict in the 24th century, so we kept trying to find ways to circumvent that with characters of other species. It made sense to make them more contentious. But anyway, let's go ahead and put her in either the commander or the captain tier, I think. So she'd be a B or a C list character. For me, I don't love her right at the beginning, but I think by season 4, I really love that character, and I think putting her together with Tom Paris was probably the thing that most let her shine and gave her it kind of punctuated that character, made me care more. And interestingly, they had a relationship, a friendship, kind of before that, and so it really feels like it evolves into a true romance, on maybe even the same level. I don't think I like their relationship quite as much as what I'm about to mention, but I think the gradual way that relationship evolves is on the same level as Odo and Kira. Okay, I'm gonna go faster than this. Sisko is either captain or admiral tier, and the only reason I don't immediately, I hesitate at all to put him at our S tier, our admiral tier, is just because it takes a while for him to find his footing. But then we have the exact same thing with Picard, and he's going to go into Admiral tier, certainly his own TV show notwithstanding, because in my brain, that's not canon, and I don't want to talk about that. But, and no, I've not finished 3rd season yet. But anyway, Sisko becomes one of the most complex and richest characters in Star Trek, I think. And he's certainly the most, I don't know if I want to say like ethically ambiguous of the main series captains. Maybe so. I mean, he's the character that will take the most risks, which is a lot of why he makes the most sense to be a wartime captain. Of course, he's got some great speeches that rival Picard's. Of course, he's got the commanding presence that rivals, if not sometimes surpasses, Picard's, and the religious context with his character gets super layered and fascinating, and he's the captain that changes the most from beginning to end, most assuredly. Hello, Attila the Finster. Are you getting Picard Season 3 and Strange New Worlds Season 2 on Blu-ray? No, I'm not buying any of New Trek right now. Maybe eventually I'll get Strange New Worlds because I like it more than the rest of them. But I don't care for New Trek overall, and I don't really need to have those. And I'm still subscribed to Paramount Plus if I really want to watch that stuff. So I don't know. Maybe at some point I will feel the need to do that. But yeah, overall, I think I am going to have to throw Sisko all the way to the Admiral tier. Crusher is tough because I want to like her more than I do, and Gates McFadden is, I think, a really good actress. But and I'm going to say this about, unfortunately, probably a few of the female characters, if not a lot more of them. But she is just underutilized much of the time, and her, some of her characters focused episodes are not some of the better episodes of that show. There's a couple that are quite good. I like Remember Me a lot, but you get things like the Do Not Light the Candle episode from season 7. What is that called? It's on the tip of my tongue. And she's kind of irritating and eye-bored. Like there's she should be kind of less forceful in her like preachiness with ethics and stuff than she is, I think. But I'm gonna have to. I don't want to go all the way to ensign with her. She's somewhere. I don't think she's somewhere between ensign and lieutenant. And of course, we do nothing with her in the movies. So yeah, I'm on the fence about just how far down I want to put her. I like the TNG characters just altogether are so iconic that it's difficult to go like too low with them. But yeah, certainly massively underutilized, as is Chakotay. In fact, I think I have to put Chakotay underneath her. Sometimes you start to get a better sense of where the placement should be relative to other items that you've already ranked, but Chakotay is a character that had a lot of potential, and for lots of reasons very quickly kind of went to the wayside and was just a little bit of a placeholder character. And again, he's got some cool episodes too. What is it, Collective? Is that the episode? The season 3 episode where he's in like kind of a mini board collective to save his life. He's quite good in that. I love Shattered a lot. That's a Chakotay-centered episode in season 7 Voyager where all of the ship is cut up into different time periods. So he's got some great episodes. He's really good in Scorpion. Really, he's at his best when he and Janeway are at odds. And I think he would have gotten a lot more to do and would have been a lot more interesting if only we hadn't abandoned the 2 crews idea with the Maquis and Starfleet at the beginning of that show. Part of the problem was that Robert Beltran was maybe too forthcoming about how he felt about not getting enough to do on that show, and I think because of that, he got less to do. It was always the sense I got, and nothing against Beltran. Like I totally empathize with him with that, but I think the producers didn't really like the fact that he made it as clear as he did that he wasn't happy, and I think they didn't write enough for him, partly because of that. O'Brien is, I think, a captain character, and I think something of an unsung hero, really, for Deep Space Nine, and really TNG also. He's there from the very beginning. We just did Farpoint yesterday on Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot of TNG, on the pilot show, and O'Brien is there from the very beginning, even though he's not named yet. And so he is even though he obviously doesn't get as many episodes as Worf, like Worf, he's a staple that's there from the beginning, going all the way through Deep Space Nine. Of course, Worf kind of disappears for a little while because he isn't in DS9 from the very beginning. But another character that had a lot of potential and then I actually got to kind of see that potential through, which was wonderful. He's your family man. He's a hard worker. He's real down to earth, but there's also a lot of humor with that character. Probably the smartest thing we ever did with O'Brien was putting him together with Bashir, and that's another not romantic relationship, but friendship that it really evolves naturally, where you really believe where all of that goes. And he also is sometimes a really tragic character, surprisingly. Like, he's a really versatile guy, all the different things that we do with him, and with his background with the Cardassians, and it's kind of shocking also just the sheer number of duplicate episodes we do with O'Brien. I don't know why that kept coming up, but there are 3 or 4 episodes where there's like a second O'Brien for some reason. everybody's talking about Pulaski in the comments right now. We'll get to her in a little bit. And then we have what I think this is Damar. It's funny. We've got every character so far I've got in a different column or a different row, I should say. But anyway, let's put Damar. He's from Deep Space Nine. He is Ducat's right-hand man. I'm going to throw him in the commander section. If he had died somewhere in like season 4 or 5, he'd be lower, and we wouldn't really think a whole lot of that character. But where Damar really starts to shine is during the Dominion War, and particularly in the last season. And along with a lot of other fans, I have many reservations about the last season of Deep Space Nine. I think there were some missteps in how the series closed out and how the Dominion War was resolved, but Damar was not one of those problems. Getting him to the place we do right at the end of the series. I hesitate in case people haven't seen that. I don't want to spoil it. I'm usually not too careful about spoilers with Star Trek, but DS9 every now and again I'm like, in case you haven't seen it, I don't really want to tell you what happens with Damar, but he, like so many characters in that show, starts from a kind of archetypal place and becomes very layered and very likable and surprisingly sympathetic. He's not just a typical Cardassian, and you really kind of feel for him. Where do I personally put Data? Like, Data, of course, needs no introduction. He's kind of like Spock these days in that he's almost like glorified on like a god status level, which somewhat irks me. But the way we explore the human condition through a artificial intelligence who wants to be human is handled really well in that show on kind of an Asimovian sort of level. And a lot of people would put him at S tier. He's not my personal favorite TNG character, but I mean, he's certainly up there. So I mean, that's an admiral or a captain kind of character. He's another character that takes a while for Brent Spiner to find his voice, but that's more on the early scripts and the constant turnover of writers with that show than it is on Spiner himself, of course. And I think I could say that about almost every character in that show. The next box has both Data and Lore in it, so we're going to count that, of course, as Lore. And I have to put Lore, I'm sorry to say, at a lieutenant level, I think. I'm going to put her right there with, or him, pardon me, right there with Crusher. He's a fun idea. Brent Spiner has, is obviously a joy to watch when he's playing the evil twin character, but we never do enough with Lore, and he disappears in Descent. Really needed at least one more episode, I think, and we never got that. Brothers is a really awkward mixed bag where he shows up and then just kind of leaves, is sort of a cliffhanger thing. And then we don't wrap that up until Descent, which is really not very good. So it's odd. Like, I like Brothers, but as far as Lore himself goes, I think the actual best Lore episode is Data Lore, which is awkward because it's first season and it's a little bit cartoonish in its way, but I get why he's a fan favorite character. But it's a lot more, I think, about Spiner than it is that character himself. And Lore is more interesting in what he does for Data, in showing the potential dangers in the artificial intelligence getting emotions and being closer to human than actually anything with that character himself. Troy is another very mixed bag character, and I actually think this is going to be high for some people. I think I have to put her above Crusher. She can be also very irritating in places. I don't mean to say that Crusher is constantly irritating. More often, she's just underutilized. But again, often when she actually gets a lot to do, that's when I start finding her annoying. Another episode I could have mentioned about her, the title is escaping me right now, but is the episode where she's investigating the death of a scientist she admires. The episode with the Ferengi scientist. She's excellent in that. Like, when they actually let her be personable and they let Gates McFadden really run with that character, she's great. But as far as Troy goes, The reputation early on, of course, was all she does is state the obvious. She tells you the emotions that people have that you can kind of tell just looking at them. She's got a weird accent that's not entirely consistent, and she can be really kind of whiny, and she's kind of, sometimes it feels like she's just there for eye candy, just there as the bimbo on the ship. But I put her a little higher than Crusher because I think she shines more often. I think I like her more often, and I really like her by the movies. Again, doesn't get enough to do, well, at least by First Contact, because Generations famously she just crashes the ship. But with First Contact, she's actually used to comedic effect really well. In particularly in the scene where she gets drunk, I think that's great. There's a really good, I think in the last couple seasons, she gets pretty great. I like her a lot in Disaster when she's when she has to take over commanding the ship and is weighing all the options, and finally when she makes her decision, it's final and she sticks with it, and you see a glimpse of what she maybe could be in command. Going along with that, there is an episode where she gets where she decides to try to get promoted, and she goes through a test where she has to learn to put other crew members in danger, where she goes on the holodeck and she has to send Geordi to his death, and that's wonderful. So, like, Marina Sirtis does a great job playing those dramatic situations, I think. So I put her a little bit higher there. Dukat is perhaps the greatest villain in Star Trek, next to Khan, and for that I have to put him all the way at Admiral status. Again, if you've not watched DS9, just go check that character out. Another really layered person with lots of different facets, and he is, by the end, absolute, unequivocal, bona fide evil, but that's not to say that there isn't still potential humanity in him, which I think is the reason that he is so evil, because he just ignores it at most turns. And, like, he's sort of that villain you love to hate. He's sort of, in his way, a Lex Luthor type, where, or at least the best versions for me of Lex Luthor, where like Smallville, where like he, or even like a Lionel Luthor from Smallville, where, yeah, he probably does love his son, like Dukat probably does love his daughter, but there are things that matter more than that to him. He cares a lot more about power. So there's a place where, I'm going to try not to spoil too much, but there's a place where he kind of goes mad when, well, I guess I am going to spoil this, but so spoilers, I guess. But, like, for instance, there's a place where he goes mad when he loses his daughter, and it's sad, it's tragic, but he's not any more or less evil because that happens. And part of what's interesting about that is that he's even more nuts and terrifying because of the the traumatic thing that happens there. But the contrast between him and Cisco is also wonderfully layered, and I don't know. I think he's maybe my favorite villain in Star Trek. And then we have Ezri Dax, who is a kind of divisive character. I think more people dislike her than like her. She is going to be somewhere between lieutenant and ensign. I actually think these days I got to put her in the lieutenant section. So that would be what, like C list or D list? Yeah, because ensign. Well, what is this? Like A, B, C, D? Yeah, that'd be a C list place. I used to dislike her a lot more than that, and the more you watch season 7, I mean, there are a couple of episodes where she's like kind of decent, kind of gets to shine. I think if Jadzia Dax didn't exist and she was a like made up character from the ground up, she would seem less irritating. I don't think the performance itself, like DeBoer, I think she's quite good. I don't think the performance itself is obnoxious or irritating. I think the problem is stories, and for that, I don't think it's fair to put her any lower than that. It was just an awkward choice, right? Like, having a counselor on the station at that time, and not, not having one earlier in the war was odd. If you're going to do that at all, it seemed kind of forced. It seemed out of nowhere. Doing any of that romance stuff with Worf, I think, was a big mistake with her. Let me take a quick look and see how long I've been at this. 25 minutes already. Okay, well that's about normal for me. Let me see if I can do this a little bit quicker. So next up we have the female founder who is kind of running the war through Deep Space Nine. She's kind of the face of all of that, and she's interesting enough. I think she ends up just being in the commander section. You always had that question of how much is that character in an actual individual, and how much is she just a stand-in for the founders themselves? And that's not a criticism. It's always interesting to sort of wonder that. She's at her best when she and Odo link when they have their joining. That's when she's at her most interesting. I think by 7 she starts to feel a little bit more like a standard sort of cartoon villain. And then you have give me 1 second here. I just want to check comments and see what folks are saying here. Hello, Don Ranger Power. Good to see you again. Eric Brown, 7 was just eye candy because UPN needed ratings. Yeah, but also fascinating character and really, really well acted. So if you mean like that was the reason she was made eye candy, yes. I would not agree if you're saying that that's all she was. Certainly. Eric Brown, issue with the Voyager was they had too many Spocks. You had Tuvok, EMH, Doctor, and now 7. That's an excellent point, yeah. And I always felt that way too. Although I do appreciate that at least the show recognizes that in a lot of places with Tuvok and 7. Whenever we would put them together, we kind of showcase that similarity. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to this. So next up we have Elam Garak. And Garak is an Admiral character. If my wife comes back and looks at this, she's not going to talk to me for 3 days if I put him any lower than that. That is my wife's favorite character in Deep Space Nine, one of her absolute favorite characters in Star Trek. All I can keep saying with DS9 characters is they're layered, they're complex, there's a lot to them. And the most impressive thing about Garak is how little we know about him all the way through the series. There is a natural evolution. We do continue to find out more and more about him as we go along. But when you get to the end of it, it all seems to add up, and at the same time, there's still that mystery. There's still plenty you don't know, and you still wonder how truthful he's been with his friends and with the audience about certain things. You'd think you'd know everything there is to know by pale moonlight, but you just don't. And that's fantastic. And he's probably my favorite spy character in anything. By the way, I actually went on Cameo and I got him, that actor, to do a message for my wife for her birthday, which was just kind of knocked her out. It was a big deal for us, so I'm really glad I did that. And he was wonderfully gracious and awesome, and he was well worth it. Now why can I not think of his name right off the top of my head? It's just not coming to me. But anyway, he was wonderful. And then, sorry, I've got Aaron Eisenberg ringing in my ear, and of course, that is Nog, who passed away a few years ago, which is really sad. And Sarah was also a really big fan of him, the actor more than the character. We met him at a convention once, and he was just lovely to the both of us. Anyway, here comes Geordi LaForge. And Geordi, I'm going to put at the commander status. Another character who is really well acted and is a lot of fun, and the kind of guy you just want to sort of pal around with. I think LeVar Burton was one of the most convincing actors in making us buy that he knows what all the jargon means, what all the technobabble is. You really buy him as being confident in his job. And it was always kind of unfortunate and a mistake, I think, that you had this running gag, which it felt like the show didn't even realize it, that he just could not make it work with ladies, and it made no sense because he seemed so charming, and it was like I kind of get it if you want to, make that a hang up for him and make him kind of insecure where he just freezes up around women and is having a hard time figuring out how to date. And then eventually he finally, makes that work out. And you got the sense that he was probably supposed to eventually be with Leia Brahms. I haven't finished season 3 Picard. I'm sure they said that they actually got together. They do that in All Good Things, of course, as well. So, I mean, eventually, sometime in the future, depending on what you want to think of as real in canon, he probably does finally actually get together with someone. But that was always kind of irksome to me. And sometimes it felt like he was kind of more there to propel stories forward and to facilitate Data's stories than anything. His own stories are not the best in that show much of the time. I like them better than a lot of the Crusher stories, certainly. But, he's got things like The Enemy, which is really good, with him and the Romulan down on the planet, and the episode where he turns into an alien that you can only see with like infrared or whatever. That's a really good one. But a lot of them are kind of, the big sci-fi stories where he doesn't get real great character pieces much of the time. In fact, I think one of the better Geordi episodes is Relics, with him and Scotty. Andrew Robinson, thank you very much. I felt bad about that. Sorry, Andrew Robinson. Eric Brown, Nana Visitor goes in S tier only because without her, TV Guide has no crossword puzzle. That's hilarious. Attila the Finster, Geordi does get together with someone. I'm sure that person is talking about Picard. Here comes, and I mean more permanently. Here comes Guinan. Guinan is Captain or S tier. I'll put her in the captain spot, although it's hard not to go all the way to the top. I'm a little bit on the fence about that. Voice of Reason kind of character. She's always got some really witty way to illustrate a point and give people advice. She's one of the best kind of role models in Star Trek, I think. Maybe the main reason I can't get her all the way to the top is because we never do enough with her background, with the lore with that character. And that was always kind of disappointing to me. The way she and Picard meet in Time Zero is, I think, kind of lame. And never felt like what we were setting up with that. So that's a character that stays mysterious, but not in an interesting way to me, in the same way that Garrick does. Those are a couple characters that would have been really cool to put together, right? But Guinan has that thing that I'm always impressed with, where, and I can't give Whoopi Goldberg too much credit for this because she's not writing the scenes, but it seems like no matter what episode she's in, when it's just bar scenes, when it's just like prune juice and like the, well, I'm just thinking of good episodes right now, but I was going to say like the fencing scene in Iborg and stuff like that. No matter what the quality is with the rest of the episode, her scenes are always consistently well written. It doesn't seem to matter what it is. Now we get to Ensign Kim. I think I have to put him one rung above Chakotay. He gets too many character episodes in Voyager that are all kind of samey, and we don't do enough with him. But I love his relationship with Tom Paris, which the more I'm talking about that show, it seems like Tom Paris ends up being kind of the saving grace of it. I like Garrett Wang quite a bit. He's also really great in person. I've met him 3 or 4 times. I actually interviewed him once, and then for reasons I don't want to get into right now, ended up losing the audio file, which really sucked. But anyway, he's really cool, but the character himself, once again, underutilized, but almost over and underutilized simultaneously, right? Like, we're just spinning our wheels with that character. A lot of, he's dating the wrong girl episodes. And yeah, we make light of that and we make that a running joke, but that doesn't make it get more interesting. And people always complain that he never gets promoted in that show. Famously, they wanted to kill him off at the end of the third season, and then he got too popular and he made what was it, Time magazine, or one of those magazines, like most like 10 most beautiful people list or something, and they didn't feel like they could get rid of him, so they just gave him less to do after that. He was just kind of there. Jadzia Dax is somewhere between a commander and captain tier character. I guess because of, like, she has some wonderful episodes, and that's a character that certainly gets a lot of growth, like a lot of people on Deep Space Nine. The difference is she's not as interesting from the start as she could have been, which is why it's great where we finally get with her until, of course, Terry Farrell ends up leaving the show for tragic and kind of awful reasons, really. And the way she's killed is, I'm spoiling that too, is bad, is awful. Forget the thing I said earlier about spoilers with Deep Space Nine. I guess I am spoiling stuff. But anyway, Terry Farrell was really wet behind the ears, admittedly, from her own words, and didn't really know what she was doing at the beginning. And boy, does she grow as an actress very, very, very quickly. The Trill mythology is really interesting. I think we do enough with that, quite a bit. And I like her and Worf together quite a bit as well. And then Jake Sisko has never been like anywhere near my favorite Deep Space Nine character, but once again, he starts off in a kind of archetypal place, and he gets more complex. I'll put him in the commander tier also. It's hard to go too much lower than that, really, with anybody from DS9, with the exception of Ezri Dax, I guess. Well, I'm seeing another character that will probably go that low. No, a couple. Okay, never mind. At least characters as major as Jake Sisko, I'll say that. We'll get there in a little bit. This is going to take a lot longer than I was expecting it to, but I guess I was naive, like I always am. Anyway, it's Star Trek. I guess I have a lot to say. But Jake Sisko is... his best episode is my favorite episode in the series, but it's not Sirach Lofton that does it for me. It's actually Tony Todd. The episode is The Visitor, and it's one of the best kind of time travel episodes, pseudo time travel episodes, I guess, in the show. That's a wonderful character piece where he grows up to be a writer that didn't think about himself enough, and didn't have a fulfilling enough life because he worked too hard to save his father, who was already basically gone. And ultimately, he ends up full on saving him and gets a second chance at life. But boy, it's tragic initially. And again, Tony Todd is so great in that. But weirdly, I think Jake is kind of underutilized also, in particularly the second half of that show. I was wondering if maybe there wasn't something a little bit more interesting we could have done with him than just having him be a journalist, although I do like the idea of his not going the same direction as his father, where he doesn't have to be try to become a starship captain. And undeniably, it's a beautifully believable relationship between them. And he was, in a lot of ways, Jake Sisko. Pardon me. He was Jake Sisko. In a lot of ways, he was Wesley Crusher done right. Eric Brown says Sisko gets A tier because he had to make Time's children decision episode, which was tough for any captain. It's really funny. That's the one you bring up. Sure. Picard is Admiral tier. I've always said he's my favorite character in really anything. He is kind of my role model. It always has been. He's to quote him from Pegasus, he's a role model with Captain Picard Day. And again, his own TV show notwithstanding, because that feels like a totally different character to me, and I don't understand that guy, but I don't want to get into that. Just a really principled guy who's not afraid to say to kind of consider and reevaluate his convictions is he also said once in a speech has the absolute best captain speeches. I like how stolid he is, or he tries to be, but we get kind of underneath that armor quite a bit as the show progresses, and he is easily the most complex character in that show. That starts to get rivaled by Deep Space Nine in a lot of characters in that show, certainly. But he, for my money, like right up with Kirk. He's the most heroic, like works as hard as possible to do no wrong kind of character that still can make mistakes. But you just want to be that guy, and I think part of the reason that you had the Kirk Picard debate so hard when I was a kid was because a lot of people those seem like two archetypes where a lot of people want to be either the more intellectual like thoughtful hero, or the stalwart kind of action hero. And not to say that Kirk was not thoughtful, but a little bit less introspective in the way that Picard was. And then we have Bashir, who is a really fascinating sort of mixed bag. Bashir, I've got to put, I think, on, let's see. Boy, it's weird that I'm putting Jake Sisko. Maybe Jake Sisko needs to go in the Lieutenant tier, which seems kind of harsh. Boy, this is tough, actually. I don't know. I'm looking at this and I'm going like maybe Jadzia should go a little higher. I don't know. This is kind of difficult because I don't feel like I can put Jake Sisko and Bashir on the same level, because I think Bashir is a better character than Jake Sisko. Maybe I will pop him up to captain, strangely enough, and it's because of what we do with him in the latter half of the show, and particularly once we find out that he's genetically engineered. I love the way that we kind of, really classy, clever way retcon why that guy is so smart and why he didn't seem to be about a whole lot early on in that show. I'm gonna start going a little bit quicker. I don't like Cassidy Yates in general. I never loved that that's who Sisko wound up with. The whole thing with her being like sympathetic to the Maquis and going to prison for a while and all that was kind of interesting. After that, I don't really need anything to do with that character, and again, I kind of hate that that's who he got with. I like that actress a lot. She's wonderful in the Orville. She's wonderful in 24, and I mean she's decent in DS9. I just don't like that character very much. I wish that well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I was gonna say, but anyway, I gotta put her in crewman or ensign. I don't know. There's part of me that wants to throw her all the way to the bottom, to be honest with you. Like just relative to the rest of this list. So yeah, I actually think I am going to do that. Let's again, just relative to the rest of this list. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I wish that actress more often wasn't typecast, and it's really nice that by the Orville she's not, and she finally gets to play a more kind of likable, more altruistic character who's not conniving. And like it's maybe harsh to call this character that, but she gets to that place too much for my taste. And I think Sisko should have really second-guessed marrying her. And then we get to Pulaski, who I like more than a lot of people. I think she's also going to go in the lieutenant section for me. And I still maintain that I'm not saying that Crusher shouldn't have come back, but I will maintain. Oh, and I was going to mention ethics, too. As silly as that episode is with the barrel and everything with Worf, I think Crusher's really good in that. But anyway, Pulaski, I think, would have been, if not a fan-favorite character, accepted a lot more had she continued, and Michael Piller and some of those guys had gotten a hold of her character by 3 and 4 when that show was finding more of a sure footing. Pardon me. I think she would have become a lot more like McCoy, who she was kind of based on, but I don't think it ever really got to that place. And she has a couple of pretty good episodes in season 2. I think the episode where she's rapidly aging, Diana Muldaur, is really good in. And I really like that actress. She didn't apparently really like being on that show very much and just didn't think that her character was gelling with everybody. So she was perfectly happy leaving. But I think, had all things been equal, had she stayed, I think people would have liked her more as she went along. Janeway goes in also the commander section for me, because I think she just gets thrown under the bus too much in that show. Like, she gets the reputation from a lot of people who aren't big Voyager fans, especially, that she is almost like a murderer, and she makes too many more than ethically ambiguous decisions, like ethically bereft decisions, and not just Equinox, like several other crazy things that she does, and she just seems a little bit more crazed than I think she's intended to be. And like, if that's the story you wanted to tell, where we were actually, especially in something where we were allowed to be more serialized, then sure. But I think she gets off a little too easy maybe by the end of that show, considering some of the more than questionable decisions that she ends up making. I just wish that there were more consequences for that. But like, I love how far she goes in things like Scorpion. But then it feels like the show on like a weekly basis can't decide just how desperate it wants to make that character. And there's places where she's way too passive-aggressive to be a starship captain. I think Kate Mulgrew does a good job. When people say that she sounds like a harpy, like, I kind of get that. Like, it might be nice, just for people's ears if she wasn't in that register, I guess, but whatever. That's how Kate Mulgrew talks. Like, whatever. I've never been a fan of Keiko O'Brien. I do think that is a whiny character very often who is not understanding enough about the kind of demanding job that her husband has. Maybe I like her a tad more than Cassidy Yates. Maybe, but I definitely like Chakotay better than both of them. So I think they're both going to go all the way down to the crewman level. She's got okay things in some episodes here and there, but I overall don't really care for that character. So that's maybe harsh, but I want to fill these slots and have at least one or two in every slot if I can. Kes is not a character I hate, but a character certainly with Oh no. I messed up something here. Did I lose my... Oh, I don't know what I did. Oh, good. I was worried that I was going to lose all my boxes here, but I did not. That's good. Attila the Finster, Janeway is F because she prolonged them in the Delta Quadrant. Yeah, so he agrees with me that Voyager is built on a faulty premise. There's really no reason that they had to be stuck in the Delta Quadrant. All Janeway had to do was fire on the caretaker array as she's flying through the vortex. And the end. You're good. You're back on the Alpha Quadrant. She didn't have to do that. But it's like, do we want to blame the character for that, or do we want to blame the writers and producers for coming up with a really contrived scenario? Anyway, Kes has some annoying kind of quirks. I don't know why she has to look as much like an elf as she does. When we get to later third season and Jennifer Lien is about to leave the show and she's got the longer hair and is allowed to look attractive like that actress is, I found and I think a lot of people did. And I don't mean to just talk superficially about this character, but I found myself going like, why did she look like that all through that? It was just a really strange choice. It wasn't appealing, and I don't mean to say that she needed to be like a catsuit sex symbol, and she was in a catsuit later on for whatever reason. I don't mean that. I'm just saying like she looked real elfish, and I guess if the whole species was like that, whatever. But they're not really, so it was odd. Anyway, I just never really cared for her look. And a lot of Delta Quadrant species I feel that way about, where it just felt like we were kind of we were being cheap and out of ideas, and everybody had just a weird ears or just a bump on their head, and here's one we haven't done yet that nobody's going to remember and is real kind of uninteresting. But anyway, enough about just the look of that character. Kes and Neelix was a relationship that never really worked. I'm going to throw her in the ensign spot, I think. She's got that obnoxious like scream thing she does that was always really weird to me. I don't like Elogium. I think that episode is awful. But she does have some okay episodes. Her best episode is, what's the name of that? It's got time in the title, where she's aging backwards. That is fascinating, and Leanne is really, really good in it. It's too bad that we couldn't have had a dynamic with her in 7 of 9, because I think that could have been really interesting. Like, I didn't really want her to leave the show, and more should have been done with both the fact that she is that she doesn't live at the same, pardon me, that she has a shorter lifespan than regular people. She should have been allowed to live out her life on that ship and died in the show. It would have been really nice to get to see that and just watch her become elderly and be like the grandmother character for everybody on the ship by season 7. That could have been really neat, and it's baked in there, it's right there, and it's really sad that we didn't do that. We also didn't do enough with her superpowers, with her telepathic, telekinetic abilities. Next up, we get to Kira, who is another DS9 character that I don't care for from the beginning, and then come to really like, maybe even sort of adore by 6th and 7th season. I'm going to put her in the captain or commander section. I think there's some kind of overacting, some kind of trying too hard in the first couple of seasons with her, and then I think she really finds it, and that's another character where the romantic relationship helped me like her a lot more. She and Odo were great together. However you feel about how that whole thing ends ultimately, people are getting ahead of me here talking about Odo and stuff. Attila, Kes is F. The character is not compelling. 7 is S. The actor of Kes is in jail. I didn't know that. And having a hard time with life and won't be in the new Voyager documentary. I had not heard that. I didn't know that. I know that she has a long history of mental illness, and I don't know if it's depression, bipolar, what. I don't want to speculate about that because I don't know. But I know that had a lot to do with why she ended up having to leave the show, which is sad. I mean, and I'm saying, with the criticisms I'm making about how the character was handled and that she should have been there longer, all things being equal. Having said that, I also don't think there's anything wrong with recasting a character. Particularly one like that, that's like not your, captain, not like she's main cast, but is not as, such a pivotal character and such a fan favorite character that people are gonna, kind of relent on you when you recast. But generally, I just think recasting is the way to go with a thing like that. And then we get into Lwaxana Troi, another really mixed bag sort of character. And if I only had TNG to go with, she would probably be like an ensign character, but I'm going to put her in, this would be the C list tier again. Lieutenant or commander, she was always annoying to me, and she's one of those characters that's supposed to be fun because she's irritating, and like that's on purpose. And so looking at her through Picard's eyes, you're supposed to be kind of chuckling because she's always coming on to Picard and he doesn't want anything to do with her. I don't think any of her episodes in TNG are particularly great, is part of the problem. And I felt like Picard whenever she would come on the ship. But then she's in, 2 if not 3 episodes of Deep Space Nine, and her relationship with Odo is really interesting, and Majel Barrett really shines in those. And so I like her more once we get there, but I think she's just going to overall be in the C list, the lieutenant list here for me. I love Martok. He's one of my favorite Klingons. I think he's got to go up to at least captain. I love his family dynamic with the House of Martok and bringing Worf into that. He also has a great commanding presence, and it's fun how much we explore him as a leader and what a Klingon ship is like, and running one versus Starfleet ships, and he also makes you really appreciate Klingon culture and the respect they have for their world and their society a lot more. I start to get the warrior society thing and how that could even last. I buy into it a lot more when I look at Martok, and Hertzler is just a hell of an actor. Morn is gonna be like commander or captain tier. I think a lot of people would put him at S just because he's kind of a hilarious, beloved character in Deep Space Nine. I'm not gonna put him any higher than commander, just because I want to keep that for the really layered, complex, interesting characters, I think. But well, I mean, Guinan I'm putting higher than that, but she feels like she's got quite a bit more complexity. That's not what Morn is about, though. The point of Morn is he never says anything, but apparently he talks all the time. We just don't hear him say anything. And he's just got like an undeniably cool and memorable look. And Who Mourns for Morn is one of the funniest episodes of that show. Next up, we have Tasha Yar, who is going to be either a lieutenant or an ensign character. Once again, just because we don't do enough with her, but I think Yesterday's Enterprise has to pop her up to lieutenant. They just didn't know what to do with her in that first season, like with a lot of those characters, and she kind of just stood around and had the real typical kind of read whatever's going on the monitor sorts of lines, and we tried to give her a backstory with like a lot of violence, where she had been like a runaway slave on her planet or something, but not enough ever came from that because that actress got sick of not having anything to do, and so she left early. And then she kept really, really wanting to come back. And what we do with Tasha Yar in Yesterday's Enterprise is much better than the whole Sela thing, of course. But I don't think you can even tell that Denise Crosby can act, really, until you get to Yesterday's Enterprise. Neelix is... I'm going to go lieutenant and not ensign. I know people find him excruciatingly irritating, but he definitely has his moments, and I think he is elevated by Ethan Phillips' performance. The relationship he has with Tuvok is sometimes annoying and sometimes kind of heartfelt and lovely. It really just depends on who's writing and what the episode is. But he definitely has his moments. I don't feel like we ever evolve him as much as maybe we could have. Let me look at comments here. Boy, if it's me, it's just going to be an over-hour show. That's what we're learning. I think maybe we already knew that, though. Let me see what folks are saying in the comments here. Eric Brown, Morn is Norm from Cheers. That's true. I don't know if I've ever had that thought, but that's exactly what he is. Yeah. Eric Brown, Yar did not fit in the series at all, but a Romulan daughter was awesome. I mean, agree to disagree. That always seemed too fanficky to me, and it was her idea, and it was a way for her to get back on the show. I don't think that was handled right either. It was just so kind of cartoony by unification. Eric Brown, Gates McFadden did the same thing. She got a spot in Hunt for Red October, and that was it. Yeah. Clone Army, Neelix is better once Cass leaves as well. Yep, that's right. For a second, I thought you wrote Netflix, but he was talking about Neelix. Jason used to call Neelix Netflix, which I think is just absolutely hilarious. Okay. I'm fading here. Let me see if I can get through the rest of this. Next up, we have Nog. I'm just going to be a broken record with Deep Space Nine characters. He starts off as the kid that is Agan, our main character kid on, and is maybe not the best influence on him, and he's just a snarling child Ferengi, and then he ends up turning into a very disciplined, respected Starfleet officer who's making history because he's the first Ferengi in Starfleet, which was always really believable, and surprised that worked, because I don't think I liked that idea from the beginning. He is commander or captain tier for me. When you get to his, like, losing his leg in the Dominion War, and then the rehabilitation and all of that, that all just really resonated with me. And like seeing him again, he's also maybe even more so than Jay Sisko, like what Wesley Crusher could have been. It's just fascinating to see him as a child grow up, but still not lose complete respect for his culture either. He never completely turns his back on the Ferengi. He just tries to find a way to marry those ideals as much as he can with the ideals of the Federation. And arguably, he even has something to do with the with maybe the changes that the Ferengi make to their laws and their culture by the end of that series. Yeah, commander or captain? Yeah, I'm going to stick with the commander tier, I think. And then we get to Odo, who is in the captain tier for me. Odo was a character that from the beginning you never totally knew whose side he was on. Like, he's there before Starfleet even comes in, working for the Cardassians, and you go, like, can we really trust this guy? And just with his ability being a shapeshifter, you're already thinking like he could just be deceptive by nature, and he is really good at that, of course. But in an odd way, he gets to be kind of the Spock character for that show, but is very emotional and in his way, and is one of the most unique characters in Star Trek, certainly. I've always been a little bit on the fence about where we leave him at the end and going back to the Great Link and all of that, but I love the way he explores his humanity like a Data, like a Spock, without having to be really related to humans in any way. Like, he's not created by a human, he's not half human, he just molds himself in the guise of these people and then longs to be like them. And it's even more tragic in some ways than a Data or a Spock, because he can't ever fully be them in the same way that Data can't, of course, but he's not, he doesn't really have a home to go back to until the very end. And if he does, he's going to be part of, like, this collective consciousness. I don't know, the whole thing is just is really interesting. And then we get to Q, who I don't know if I can go higher than Commander, just because of how we kind of keep reinventing him in some ways, and he becomes a little bit self-parody-esque by Voyager, or at least by his second appearance in Voyager, because I love Death Wish a lot. Like, Death Wish might be my favorite Q episode next to Deja Q in TNG, but then after that, it kind of all goes downhill. The best Q episode, hands down, is Deja Q. But then I think Death Wish is a close second. But there's not too much we need to say about Q. I mean, John Delancey is hilarious, but he can also be very menacing in that role. He plays the bad guy, but he also is very often watching out for Picard. I think part of the problem with that character for me is just we never had a real good sense until Death Wish, really, of what the Q even really were. It would have been nice if we could have fleshed out that mythology and got more concrete with it, I suppose. And I like Tapestry a great deal as well. And then we get to Quark, who is a captain tier character. And I have to put him up that far because not only is his dynamic, his contentious dynamic with Odo always entertaining, and again, I'm using the word layered and complex, but, two guys that love to hate each other, but at the end of the day, probably really love each other, that, would never call each other friends, but really care ultimately, and couldn't be more different. But also, I love Quark because I don't like the Ferengi, but I love Quark. And he is the most Ferengi in some ways of the Ferengi, and yet the things that kind of irritate me about that species and the things that I just don't find funny, that people find funny about them, I don't turn me against Quark at all. And a lot of that is just because Armin Shimmerman is so good. More I could say about all this stuff, but I need to really blow through this now because I've got things to do. So then we get to Reginald Barclay, who is a captain, if not an admiral tier character. His evolution through two series is really, really good. Starting off as the nervous Nelly kind of character who is who we use to get a great metaphor for addiction with the holodeck. And then he ultimately becomes instrumental in getting Voyager home, or at least in making contact with them. Give me just a second. But what's great about him is he's able to evolve without losing what is fun about him in the first place. Like, he always has some level of insecurity. Even when he gets more eloquent, he still always has at least some difficulty with socializing. He never fully gets around that, or he can, like in the future in Endgame, for instance, with Voyager, he's past all that, but if he gets real flustered, he starts to stutter again. He falls back into it. Like, we don't regress his character. We do keep kind of gradually moving him along, and like letting him mature and grow. But there's never a light switch where he's the guy that he pretends to be on the holodeck. He's also a guy that continues to be prone to addiction, or prone to being like the Starfleet equivalent of a germaphobe or something. What is the word I'm looking for? He's not like agoraphobic or agoraphobic, but he gets obsessed with things. He gets obsessed with ideas. If he's not addicted to something, he is terrified that he has some kind of crazy illness or something. Anyway, then we get to Riker, who is an Admiral tier character for me. Not everybody likes Riker as much as I do. I think my wife has really turned me around on that character. When I was a kid, I didn't even really like Riker that much, but he's just so darn charming once he's, pretty early on with TNG, allowed to just basically be Jonathan Frakes. And it's just really likable. He's the guy that if you can't have Picard, I think you kind of want as a captain. And they were such a perfect team together because Riker is kind of a Captain Kirk if he was maybe a little bit less risky, maybe even a little bit more thoughtful than that. And he just has some really great episodes. Then you get Ensign Ro, who I'm going to put in the Lieutenant section, I guess. Another character that was an interesting idea that was brought on to kind of shake things up, that I think fans were always frustrated we didn't do more with, and certainly the novels are frustrated with that because there are lots and lots of books written about that character. She was supposed to be Kira. Or I should say Kira was supposed to be her. There's going to be another TNG character that we spun off into that show. And I'm not saying I wish that had happened, because Kira ultimately became a great character. And Nana Visitor is an awesome actress. But, and I like the actress that plays Ro also. I've seen her in other stuff. I think she's in 24 maybe, and some other things. But Her best episodes, curiously, in my mind anyway, don't really have anything to do with her rebellion and her feelings about the situation with Cardassia and Bajor and the Federation and all of that. Also, by the way, footnote, it's really weird that she didn't ever at least appear in Deep Space Nine. But her best episodes are things like Conundrum, where she and Riker have a thing when they have amnesia, and then when they get their memories back, they don't continue to pursue that. And she's really good in Disaster. She's really good in what is the name of that episode? The Next Phase. But like, it's not really a character piece. We don't learn anything about her. It's just another kind of procedural, fix a sci-fi problem kind of episode. And then you get to Rom, who I'm going to put in the commander tier. Another character in Deep Space Nine that has a surprising evolution, and not just because with a lot of those characters, they start at a solid two-dimensional enough place and become more three-dimensional, or they just naturally evolve. But because Rom starts as a completely different character, it's actually a bit of a retcon in a much more clunky way than Bashir's is, where he's just a TNG kind of, snarly, conniving, take everybody's money from them sort of Ferengi. We straight up just change that and say, he's got an aptitude for science, so that we can do something with him. By the Dominion War, he's a trip. He's a lot of fun. He's another kind of comic relief character that has a surprising amount of pathos. I'm gonna move right along here. Seska is a little bit of a cartoonish villain. She's on kind of the same level as Sela, maybe. I think that's going to also be an ensign character here. We'll put her right next to her once fling, Chakotay. All the weird, or not all the weird soap opera plots, but man, some really odd soap opera plots happen with her, where she starts off as a Bajoran, and then it turns out that she is a Cardassian, and then later on, she uses Chakotay's DNA to get pregnant. She impregnates herself with his child. It's very strange. I think that actress does a good job, but the character is, I don't know how else to put it, but to say a cartoon character, and there's not a lot of substance behind it. I do really like her best episode. She's not even herself. It's a holographic version of her, which is what is the name of that episode? Why can't I think of it? It's Worst Case Scenario. That's it. Where just came to me, where you have a holodeck program that Tuvok put together in case there was I think it's called Insurrection Alpha, in case the old Maquis crew, sorry, I'm starting to get tired, started to rise up and try to take over the ship, and everybody thinks that it's a holo novel. And that's a wonderful episode, and she's best in that. But that kind of says something about that character, that her best episode, she's just a hologram. And it works because she's got to be a mustache-twirling villain in that. 7 of 9 is S tier, Admiral tier. I'd put her higher than that if I could. Again, Picard notwithstanding, because she's just the Punisher in that, and not that character at all. But, I mean, what can I say about 7 of 9? Another really great, exploring what it means to be human character through interestingly, a character who is human but wasn't raised at all that way. Almost like an inverse of Odo. Odo is from a collective consciousness and I've never really compared these characters before, and was raised by individuals to be an individual. Although he's got something of a tragic upbringing where he starts off as a science experiment, so there's that whole thing. And he so he, in a way, has that in common with Seven of Nine, where he is thought of more as an automaton at some point. But she's the opposite in that she is an individual who is assimilated into a collective consciousness, and then later on comes out of it and has to be taught how to be an individual. And you have that fascinating dynamic with her and Janeway, where she is kind of forced to be an individual, and there's always that question of whether Janeway really did the ethical thing in taking her out of the collective. And there's a wonderful evolution, I think, with that character too. I think by the end we don't get her even far enough. You know, I think she could have been even a little bit more I don't know, I can't think of a better way to put it, like human feeling by the end of that, where she kind of literally and metaphorically lets her hair down more. It's almost like there was this fear of her being too against what the fans were used to. We couldn't fully evolve her into, an Annika Hansen as opposed to a Seven of Nine. Not that she ever had to use that name necessarily, but I think she stays a little bit too, like somebody said earlier, Spock-like or stoic. And if she was in Deep Space Nine, I guarantee you there would have been a much starker contrast by the end, is all I'm saying. The Doctor also goes to the Admiral, to the S tier, and appropriately next to Seven of Nine, who I still say should have been paired off the way they almost kind of were. But he is one of the better Spock-like characters in that we're able to use him for a great comic effect, and he has that Odo thing where he is where he's very emotional, but he is also feeling his way, trying to figure out, how to be a human being and exploring the human condition like that. It's really cool to have a full-on artificial intelligence like a Data who has emotions built in just because he's programmed that way. So the question is, am I feeling these emotions because they're actually legitimately mine, or is the computer just simulating actual emotions? And he actually does have a much starker contrast in his personality and how he's evolved by the end to the beginning than Seven of Nine does. Despite that weird place where he loses all of his memories and goes right back to where he was when he was first programmed, it doesn't take us very long at all to forget all about that and get him kind of right back to the emotional and the emotional place in the like intellectually mature, or I should say emotionally mature place that he's usually on. But man, he has a lot of really great episodes, and I say Spock-like. I mean, he's the Data of that show, and I think just as great, if not better, of a character, which is why I have him Admiral above Captain tier, and that's really just personal preference. Just a few more of these left. Tom Paris is going to go Captain tier for me. I think he is the glue that holds Voyager together the more I talk about him, and he's a character that really is the same from the beginning to the end, except that he just gets a little bit better at listening to authority as he goes along, and we do silly stuff with him that surprisingly works. I really like him being an aficionado of the 20th century. We use that as an excuse to get, more contemporary things into the show, but I think it works. Just a lot of kind of personality quirks that all come together to make what feels like a fully realized character. Weird little stuff like he likes to watch cartoons and he eats like peanut butter toast in the morning, and he works on cars, and he made a shuttlecraft as a hot rod, and just a really fun kind of realized character, and he likes like classic silly black and white science fiction. And all of that. One of his best episodes is 30 Days, I think, where he makes a mistake in going against orders and breaking the prime directive that gets him bumped back to ensign. And I like that he he remains likable through all of that, but he's still a flawed character that has not completely lost what got him sent to prison before that show starts. Tuvok is a frustrating character because, again, a lot more could have been done with him. I'm going to throw him lieutenant or commander. I guess ultimately lieutenant. I mean, I really like him, but I just feel like he is also a little bit of a placeholder character much of the time. Uh, he's he's got some cool stuff to do here and there in episodes, and I think Tim Russ plays a great Vulcan. But I don't think that show really knew what to do with him. Too often it was just, well, he's we have a Vulcan and we don't want to be too much like Spock, so what do we do with him? Uh, his clear longing for his family is really felt through a lot of that show, and I like his relationship with Janeway a lot. But I don't know if I can go any higher than Lieutenant with him ultimately. Vic Fontaine is a captain level character. We've got a good track record with sentient holograms, I think, in Star Trek. I love, first of all, just James Darren. He's a solid jazz singer. He has a career going all the way back to, I think, the 50s, if not early 60s. I've actually listened to some of his earlier records, and if you'll believe it, his voice has not really changed that much. It's kind of amazing how well he finds his voice early on as a singer. But more than that, he kind of becomes the Guinan sort of character for Deep Space Nine in being the voice of reason, giving people really good advice. But he also has a couple of episodes where he has his own problems, and he's allowed to mature a little bit himself. And the distinction between the sentient hologram, the self-aware hologram, and the hologram that has emotions because they're programmed that way, but isn't actually self-aware. There's a really good distinction made there, and I just think Deep Space Nine is so good at not missing those kinds of opportunities. So he's even, in some ways, arguably the EMH taken even a step farther. And then Wesley Crusher, I don't want to go all the way to Ensign because he's got a couple of really great episodes, and he does mature and grow as he goes along. I think he starts off irritating and too perfect, and he's kind of the quintessential TV show kid where he's just perfect at everything, and he's got to be the wonder child and all of that, all the way to he's going to be like the next step in human evolution or whatever. I always thought that was dumb. The Traveler thing I never liked, but I cannot deny how much more likable and relatable he becomes as he's going into Starfleet, and the First Duty is a top 10, if not top 5 episode of TNG, and it's not just the writing of Picard's acting in that. Will Wheaton is wonderful in that episode as well. Weyoun is a lot of fun. I'm going to put him in the commander tier, and I appreciate that I'm not looking at 5 different boxes for Weyoun, because there are several clones. Every time Weyoun dies, there's a new Weyoun that comes in. But yeah, he's conniving. He's mysterious. He's or mysterious isn't the right word, but he's constantly calculating and trying to be diplomatic to get whatever the. I mean, he's a consummate politician. Really, is that character. And I love Jeffrey Combs so much, and it's interesting that he's the only character that we're ranking here because we're doing a lot of major characters. But I also like the comparison and contrast you can make to a couple of the different Weyoun clones, because you have one that's more of a defector later on, but there's these kind of subtle differences maybe between some of them. And then you have, oh, interesting, we're looking at Riker again, so I'm going to assume that this is Thomas Riker. It would have been nice if we just put one of them in a gold uniform, and then it would be a lot easier to tell who is supposed to be whom. But I'm going to assume that the one with the beard is supposed to be Riker, and this other one is supposed to be Thomas Riker. I will put Thomas Riker in the commander section. I was always uh, a little bit disappointed that we didn't do a third episode with him after he works with Maquis and gets arrested in the Defiant, but both of those episodes are really good. I think Second Chances is better than Defiant. His initial introduction, endlessly fascinating to consider how much of a different person you would be if you have an entirely separate set of events happen to you from a particular moment in your life past what another version of you ends up doing. Like how much of us is uh, how much are we a sum of our experiences, and how much of us are chemical building blocks. So the age old nature versus nurture sort of question, but having two totally different versions, and not an evil twin. It's more subtle than that. Of the same person who are not the same people at all is wonderful, and it's probably Frake's best acting job in the show. Kai Wynn is another wonderful villain that you love to hate. I can't go any higher than Commander for her. I don't think. I gotta put her just under. I guess I'd put Ducat all the way up to Admiral, but yeah, I don't think I can go any higher than that for Wynn. But they're fascinating together when we finally get to that place. But I like her in stark contrast to Opaka, where she is all about power, and that's the reason that she's never going to be able to commune with her gods the way she wants to. So she's this walking contradiction where she wants two things that do not go together, and that's great. And then finally, Worf. You might think I would go all the way to Admiral with. I think I'm just gonna go to Captain with Worf. I think there are some things that we do with him that I don't love. I don't always love the way we handle his relationship with Alexander. I certainly don't like what we do with him and Ezridax in season 7, and I think it does take us a little too long to make him a little bit richer and more complex, and I think we absolutely needed DS9 for that. I also kind of wish that he had been able to be a fully fledged captain at some point. And it's kind of sad that we got him to a place where that was never going to happen. But we also wouldn't get the Klingon pardon me, that either. But we wouldn't get the Klingon lore as complex and rich and well thought out as we did without Worf, of course. And we do evolve him in really interesting ways all the way through. I love his relationship with Picard in TNG. The Chadich thing, you can really track all the moments that Worf comes into Picard's office and asks for a leave of absence for various reasons, and just see where they are in their relationship based on the ways that Picard responds to those. He's really good in like we do some really great kind of ethical conundrum stuff with Worf. He's wonderful in Drumhead, for instance. But there's so many places in TNG where he just kind of gets his ass handed to him. He gets made fun of for that a lot, and where he's kind of the obligatory character to just stand up and say in any situation, just fire on them, Captain, just fire on them, even when it's preposterous that he would consider that notion. So that's where I have everything. So in my Admiral tier, my S tier, I have 7 characters, which is fewer than I might have expected, honestly. Like, I could put Quark there, I could put Worf up there. Some of these maybe should go a little bit higher, honestly, than I put them. But I do have a little bit in every row, which is cool. In every ensign row. So anyway, we got through it. We finished it up. An hour and a half in. God, I thought this would be a shorter one, but it wasn't. Well, it's Star Trek, and it's major characters, and I just I haven't talked about all these people before. Let me see what folks are saying here. Attila the Finster, Thomas Riker is a meme. Oh, I'm sure he is. I haven't seen that, if that's true. Just want to go through real quick and see what folks are saying. Attila the Finster, the Doctor is not S, only B or C. Well, again, agree to disagree, but that's how I felt about it. Eric Brown, Seska isn't bad. She was like female Khan. Ooh, I don't agree with that. But thank you guys for watching. Really pretty. Clone Army, O'Brien would be S tier for me. I was on the fence. I really could put a lot of the Captain characters up into S maybe, but I was trying to be more choosy about the top tier. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. I will do another one of these in the not too distant future. Maybe I'll finally rank just like, I don't know, 20 or 25 things instead of 50 or 100 or 150. But I'm fading here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see some of you guys tomorrow night for the request. And we're doing, what is the name of that movie? We're doing a Tom Holland movie, and I cannot remember the name of it. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice here. Oh, Devil All the Time is what we're doing tomorrow night. Thursday night, Captain Logan show. Friday night, we're going to binge all of, get ready for it, it's going to be so exciting. We're going to binge all of Secret Invasion on Disney Plus. And I have not watched it past the first 20 minutes of the first episode because I got bored with it and I shut it off. But we're going to be doing a blind commentary for that kind of a watch party. So come in for that if you're so inclined. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and I'll see you real soon, folks. Thanks, guys. Bye, everybody.